The warning. The Hunter's Lodge on Kotor Prime was unusually quiet that night. 300 meters below the Death World's surface, the usual rowdy atmosphere had given way to something more somber. The regular crowd of seasoned hunters had thinned out after the recent string of disappearances, leaving only the most hardened, or foolish, still gathering for their nightly games of chance. Commander Lasara Ven studied the security feeds from her private quarters, her 6 crystalline eyes reflecting the dim glow of the monitors. As the station's security chief, she'd seen her fair share of strange occurrences on this Class 9 Death World, but nothing like this. 15 hunters had vanished in the past local week, their tracking beacons going dark one by one. The pattern was unsettling. A knock at her door broke her concentration. "Enter," she called out, not taking her eyes off the screens. Grundo, the veteran Yoran hunter, stepped inside. His pebbly yellow skin seemed paler than usual, and his venomous tendrils were rigid, a sign of stress among his species. "Commander, we need to talk. It's about the disappearances." Lasara turned her chair to face him. "What have you found?" "Not what. Who?" Grundo's claws clicked against the metal floor as he approached. 2 hunters just arrived from the outer rim. "They're different. They know things." "Different how?" "They're Ogrians. Former Special Forces. They've seen something like this before, and they're scared." "I've never seen an Ogrian scared, Commander." Lasara's outer eyes narrowed while her central pair focused on Grundo's face. "Bring them to me." 20 minutes later, she found herself face to face with Gro and Vgar, 2 of the largest Ogrians she'd ever encountered. Their massive frames barely fit through her office door, and their thick, armored skin bore scars that told stories of countless battles. "You know what's happening on my station," Lasara stated. It wasn't a question. Gro exchanged a look with Vgar before speaking. "We've seen the signs before, Commander. 200 cycles ago, on Ares. The same pattern, disappearances, tracking devices going dark, no bodies found." "What happened on Ares?" "It was glassed," Vgar rumbled. "The entire planet. Then launched into its sun." Lasara's tendrils coiled tightly. "Explain." What followed was a briefing that would haunt Lasara's nightmares for years to come. The Ogrians spoke of creatures they called propagators, parasitic organisms that could breed with any species, creating hybrid offspring that combined the worst aspects of both parent species. They described hive queens with telepathic abilities, drones that could survive in any environment, and a reproductive cycle so aggressive that a single specimen could overrun a planet in weeks. "Why hasn't anyone heard of these things?" Lasara demanded. "Because knowledge itself is a weapon they use," Gro explained grimly. "The queens, they can reach across space, plant images in the minds of those who know about them. That's why the authority scrubs any record of their existence. The fewer people who know, the harder it is for them to spread." "And you think they're here? On Kotor Prime?" Vgar nodded solemnly. "The pattern fits. The disappearances, the failed tracking devices, the way they're picking off isolated targets first. Classic propagator hunting behavior. How do we stop them?" "We don't," Gro said flatly. "We evacuate. Now. Before they establish a full hive. Once that happens, the only option is planetary destruction." Lasara's inner eyes widened. "I can't evacuate an entire station on your word alone. I need proof." The Ogrians shared another look. "We can get you proof," Vgar offered. "But you won't like it." "We'll need a team," Gro added. "Small, experienced. People who can keep their mouths shut and their triggers ready. And we'll need access to your heaviest weapons." Lasara considered their request. As security chief, she had a responsibility to protect everyone on this station. If these Ogrians were right, delay meant death. If they were wrong. "You have 12 hours, she decided. Get me proof. But if you're playing some kind of game. Commander, Grow interrupted, his voice deadly serious. 200 cycles ago, we watched an entire Special Forces unit die screaming. We watched friends get implanted, torn apart from the inside by their own offspring. We're not playing any games. As if to punctuate his words, the station's lights flickered briefly. In the momentary darkness, Lasara could have sworn she heard something scratching in the walls. The hunt would begin at dawn. The hunt. The armory of Hunter's Lodge hadn't seen this much activity since the Great Razorback migration 3 cycles ago. Grow methodically checked his plasma rifle while Vgar loaded specialized ammunition into a massive rotary cannon that looked comically large even in his Ogrian hands. That's quite a weapon, observed WOA, the Milokai hunter who'd been recruited for the mission. Her 6 eyes blinked in sequence as she studied the strange, corroded-looking rounds Vgar was loading. Acidic payload, Vgar explained without looking up. Fight fire with fire. Or in this case, acid with acid. Commander Lasara had assembled a team of 5 hunters for the mission, each chosen for their specific skills. Besides the 2 Ogrians, there was WOA, whose Milokai agility and multiple limbs made her perfect for close-quarters combat, Alo, the urine tracker whose venomous tendrils could potentially provide a defense against biological threats, and KZZT, a Vespidian drone whose natural armor and ability to sense pheromone trails might help them track their quarry. Remember, Grow addressed the team as they geared up, anything you see, anything you hear, it stays in this team. Knowledge of these creatures is as dangerous as the creatures themselves. You still haven't explained how that works, Alo said, adjusting his sensor pack. How can knowledge be dangerous? The queens are telepathic, Vgar replied, finally looking up from his weapon. They can reach into your mind if you know about them. Plant images, manipulate dreams. The more you know, the easier it is for them to find you. Then why tell us anything at all? KZZT buzzed, his crystalline wings vibrating with anxiety. Because going in blind is even more dangerous, Grow said grimly. We need you prepared for what we might find. Just, try not to think about it too much. The team descended into the maintenance tunnels beneath the station, following the trail of the most recent disappearance. KZZT took point, his antennae twitching as he searched for chemical signatures. The tunnels were eerily quiet, their footsteps echoing off metal walls that seemed to absorb the light from their tactical lamps. Something's wrong, WOA whispered after their first hour of searching. Where are the maintenance drones? This section should have at least a dozen units running diagnostics. As if in answer, they found the first drone around the next corner. The machine was partially melted, its central processor housing dissolved by what appeared to be powerful acid. More concerning were the strange, organic-looking modifications that had been grafted onto its remaining circuits. They're adapting, Vgar breathed, his usual bravado absent. Learning our technology. This is worse than we thought. Movement. KZZT chittered suddenly. 30 meters ahead, moving fast. The team pressed forward, weapons ready. The tunnel opened into a larger maintenance hub, pipes and conduits creating a maze of shadows above them. Something skittered in the darkness, too quick to track. Spread out, Grow ordered. KZZT, can you get a read on it? Multiple pheromone trails, the Vespidian reported. Fresh. But, strange. Like nothing I've ever encountered before. Alo's tendrils suddenly went rigid. Above us. The creature dropped from the ceiling with frightening speed. It was roughly humanoid in shape, but that's where any resemblance to natural life ended. Its skin was a chitinous black, reflecting their lights like polished obsidian. Instead of arms, it had 4 segmented appendages ending in razor-sharp points. But most disturbing was its face, or rather, the absence of one. Where features should have been, there was only a smooth, reflective surface that seemed to ripple like liquid metal. Don't let it touch you. Vgar roared, opening up with his rotary cannon. The acidic rounds tore into the creature, each impact releasing a burst of caustic chemicals that matched the monster's own acidic blood. The thing screamed, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once, and leaped with impossible agility. It ricocheted off walls and pipes, moving so fast it appeared to be in multiple places at once. WOA tracked it with all 6 eyes, her 4 arms wielding separate weapons, but even she couldn't land a clean shot. It's hurting us. Grow realized too late. Back to back. Another screech echoed through the hub, this one from behind them. Then another from the left. Another from the right. They were surrounded. That's impossible, Alo whispered. The missing hunters, they couldn't have all been turned so quickly. They weren't all hunters, Grow said grimly. Remember those missing maintenance drones? Propagators can adapt to anything. Organic, mechanical, doesn't matter. They adapt, they improve, they multiply. The creatures emerged from the shadows one by one. Each was different, showing traits of various species and machines, yet all shared that same featureless face and glossy black carapace. There were at least a dozen of them, moving with an unnatural synchronization that suggested a hive mind at work. Well, Gar managed a weak smile, at least we got the commander her proof. Anyone else hearing that? WOA asked suddenly. That, whisper. Grow's blood ran cold. He could hear it too, a soft, insistent voice at the edges of his consciousness. Almost like singing. Don't listen, he shouted. The Queen's already aware of us. She's trying to get in our heads. The creatures attacked as one, a wave of chitinous limbs and acid. The hub erupted into chaos as the hunters fought for their lives. Plasma bolts and acid rounds filled the air. WOA's multiple limbs became a blur of motion as she engaged 3 creatures at once. KZZT took to the air, his crystalline wings humming as he provided aerial support. Alo's venomous tendrils lashed out, finding gaps in the creature's armor. But they were being pushed back, forced to retreat deeper into the tunnels. The whispers grew stronger, more insistent. Images began flashing through their minds, glimpses of something vast and ancient, something that had been waiting in the dark between stars since before their species learned to walk upright. Fall back. Grow ordered, laying down covering fire. Back to the main level. We need to warn the station. They retreated, but not everyone made it. KZZT's scream cut off suddenly as something dragged him into a ventilation shaft. Alo took a glancing blow from one of the creatures, acid eating through his armor. Only WOA's quick thinking and multiple arms allowed her to drag him to safety. When they finally reached the sealed pressure door leading back to the main station, they were down to 4. Vgar's rotary cannon was empty, Grow's plasma rifle was overheating, and the whispers in their heads had become a constant, maddening chorus. Commander, Grow activated his comm unit as soon as they were through the door. We found them. And we were wrong. This isn't the beginning of an infestation. He looked at his remaining teammates, saw the same horrified realization in their eyes. The maintenance tunnels weren't where the propagators were setting up their hive. The tunnels were just their hunting grounds. The hive was already here. The hive. Commander Lasara Ven's office had become a war room. Holographic displays showed the station's schematics, with red markers indicating confirmed propagator sightings. There were far too many of them. The reactor level is completely dark, Lasara reported, her 6 eyes fixed on the largest display. We've lost all sensors below Deck 15, and communication with the maintenance crews is gone. Not gone, Grow corrected grimly. Transformed. Those crews are part of the hive now. Alo lay in the corner, medics working to stabilize him. The acid burn had eaten through his armor and into his flesh, but his urine biology was fighting back. His venomous tendrils occasionally twitched, releasing small puffs of defensive toxins that made the medic's eyes water. We need to evacuate, Vgar insisted, cleaning his massive rotary cannon. Now, before. A distant scream cut him off, followed by the station's alert klaxons. The holographic displays flickered, then showed new alert markers blooming across multiple levels. "They're moving," WOA observed, all six eyes widening. But why now? Why reveal themselves? Because they don't need to hide anymore, Grow realized. This isn't an infiltration. It's an emergence. The station shuddered. On the displays, entire sections began going dark, communications cutting out floor by floor. The screaming grew louder, more frequent. "Commander," a voice crackled over the intercom. "Multiple breaches in the residential quarters. They're coming through the walls, the floor." The transmission dissolved into static. "How many people are still on the station?" WOA asked. 843, Lasara answered immediately. 212 hunters, the rest are support staff and, she stopped, her outer eyes catching movement on one of the few remaining security feeds. By the void. The feed showed a residential corridor. The metal walls were changing. Organic growth spread like veins through the structure, pulsing with an inner light. As they watched, the growths began forming complex geometric patterns, almost like circuit boards made of living tissue. The station itself, Gar breathed. They're not just infesting it. They're converting it. Converting it into what? Lasara demanded. A proper hive, Grow explained. Those patterns, they're not random. They're neural pathways. The Queen is turning the entire station into a massive nervous system. Once it's complete, she'll have total control. Every wall, every door, every defense system, they'll all be extensions of her will. Another tremor shook the office, stronger this time. The lights flickered, and in the momentary darkness, everyone heard it, a low, rhythmic pulsing, like a gigantic heart beating somewhere deep below. "We need to find the Queen," WOA said, checking her weapons. "Cut off the head." "No," Grow interrupted. "Finding her is exactly what she wants. Those whispers in our heads, they're getting stronger. She's been calling us, trying to draw us in. We're the only ones who know what she is, what she can do. She wants that knowledge. Then what do we do?" Before anyone could answer, Alo suddenly convulsed. The medics jumped back as his tendrils went rigid, vibrating at a frequency that made everyone's teeth ache. "He's sensing something," Lasara explained. "Urans are slightly telepathic. Whatever the Queen is doing." Alo's eyes snapped open. "The core," he gasped. "She's in the core. But that's not all. She's. His back arched as another convulsion hit him. "The reactor core?" Lasara asked. "That's impossible. The radiation levels would kill anything natural," Gar finished. "But propagators adapt. They take the traits of whatever they breed with. If she managed to integrate with the reactor itself, she'd have an infinite power source," Grow concluded. "And enough energy to extend her psychic reach across the entire sector." Another violent tremor rocked the station. The holographic displays showed massive power fluctuations throughout the structure. The organic growths were spreading faster now, consuming entire decks in minutes. "We need to overload the reactor," Lasara decided. "Destroy the station before she can complete the conversion." "That won't be easy," WOA pointed out. "The way to the core is probably heavily defended," Grow nodded. "Every propagator on the station will try to stop us. And the closer we get to the Queen, the stronger her psychic influence will become." "I can help with that," Alo spoke up weakly. "My people, we have techniques. Mental shielding. I can't block her completely, but I might be able to give us a chance." "You can barely stand," Vgar protested. "Then carry me," Alo managed a pained smile. "Because without my shielding, none of us will make it within 100 meters of that core." The Queen will turn us against each other before we get close. Lysara moved to her weapons locker and began entering security codes. I'm authorizing the use of everything we have. Experimental weapons, restricted tech, all of it. If we're going to reach that core, we'll need every advantage. The locker opened to reveal an arsenal that would make a military vessel jealous. Prototype plasma weapons, phase shifters, temporal disruptors, tools that were usually considered too dangerous to use on a space station. What about the evacuation? WOA asked as she helped herself to a phase rifle. Already underway, Lysara replied. But the hangar bays are compromised. The few ships that managed to launch. I'm not sure they got away clean. If any propagators got aboard. Then we better make this count, Grow said, checking the charge on a temporal disruptor. Because if we fail, it won't just be the station we lose. The entire sector could fall. They armed themselves quickly, efficiently, each choosing weapons suited to their species and fighting styles. Vgar rigged a harness to carry Alo, whose tendrils were already beginning to weave a telepathic barrier around the group. As they prepared to leave the relative safety of the office, the station's artificial gravity fluctuated. For a moment, everyone floated inches above the floor. In that moment of weightlessness, they all heard it, a vast, ancient consciousness brushing against their minds, filled with hunger and curiosity in terrible, terrible patience. Come, it seemed to say. Come and see what you helped create. Come and be part of something greater. Remember, Grow said as gravity reasserted itself. Whatever you see down there, whatever you hear, it's not real. The Queen will try to use our own memories, our own desires against us. Trust nothing but each other. They moved out, a small team of hunters preparing to face something that had defeated entire military forces. Behind them, the organic growths continued to spread through the station's walls, forming ever more complex patterns. And somewhere far below, in the radioactive heart of the station, something vast and patient continued to pulse with alien life, waiting for its children to bring it the knowledge it craved. The hunt for the Queen had begun. But this time, they were the prey. The Queen. The descent to the reactor core was a journey into madness. The team moved through corridors that were no longer corridors, but living tunnels of pulsing biomechanical tissue. Every surface writhed with organic circuitry, creating patterns that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. Hold formation, Grow ordered as they navigated the transformed space. Watch R6. Vgar, keep Alo centered, we can't afford to lose his shielding. Alo's tendrils had formed a web of psychic energy around them, a shimming barrier that offered some protection against the Queen's influence. But maintaining it was taking its toll. The Yoran's skin had gone from its usual yellow to a sickly pale shade, and his breathing was becoming increasingly labored. Multiple contacts, Lysara warned, her outer eyes scanning their surroundings while her inner pair focused on a handheld sensor. The readings, they're unlike anything I've seen. These aren't just hybrids anymore. As if in response to her words, shapes began emerging from the walls. They moved like liquid metal, forming and reforming as they advanced. Some took humanoid shapes, others remained abstract, geometric forms that defied natural law. All of them radiated an intelligence that felt ancient and alien. The Queen's honor guard, Vgar recognized them. Direct extensions of her will. Don't let them touch you. The battle that followed was unlike anything they'd experienced. The creatures didn't just attack, they warped reality around themselves. Space seemed to bend and fold wherever they moved, making it nearly impossible to track them. Conventional weapons passed through them as if they were made of smoke, only to have them become solid an instant later to strike. The temporal disruptors. Grow shouted. They exist partially outside normal spacetime. We need to match their frequency. WOA was the first to adjust her weapon. The phase rifle's temporal settings created a cone of distorted time, slowing one of the creatures long enough for her to land a solid hit. The thing shattered like glass, its fragments dissolving into streams of data that flowed back into the walls. They're not just guards, Lasara realized as she modified her own weapons. They're like antibodies. The station really has become a living organism, and we're being treated like an infection. More creatures emerged, each more abstract and alien than the last. The team fought their way forward meter by meter, their progress marked by the increasingly desperate attacks of the station's defenses. The walls themselves began to shift and flow, trying to trap them in dead ends or crush them in suddenly constricting passages. But it was the psychological assault that proved most dangerous. Despite Alo's shielding, the Queen's influence grew stronger as they descended. Each of them began experiencing visions, memories twisted into nightmares. Vgar saw his old unit from the Ares incident, their bodies half-transformed by propagator infection, begging him to join them. WOA found herself back in the hunting grounds of her homeworld, but all the prey had become twisted, impossible things that spoke with the voices of her children. Lasara's extra eyes began showing her different versions of reality, each more horrifying than the last. "She's trying to split us up," Alo gasped, his tendrils trembling with effort. "The visions, they're targeted. Personal. She's reading our deepest fears, our strongest attachments." "Keep moving," Grow ordered, though he too was fighting his own visions. "The reactor core is just ahead. Whatever happens, whatever you see, keep moving." They emerged onto a maintenance catwalk overlooking the reactor core, and for a moment, all of them forgot to breathe. The massive chamber had been transformed into something that belonged in no sane universe. The reactor itself was still visible at the center, but it had been encased in a lattice of living metal and organic tissue that pulsed with both radiation and psychic energy. And there, suspended in the heart of it all, was the Queen. She was enormous, her form a perfect fusion of biology and technology. Multiple limbs of various designs, some mechanical, some organic, some impossible to categorize, extended from a central mass that seemed to exist in more dimensions than their minds could process. Her surface rippled with patterns identical to those spreading through the station, suggesting that she wasn't just controlling the transformation, she was the transformation. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice spoke behind them. They spun to find KZZT, the Vespidian they'd lost in the maintenance tunnels. But he wasn't KZZT anymore. His crystalline wings had become sheets of living metal, and his compound eyes reflected the same impossible patterns that covered the walls. "The Queen shows us what we could become," KZZT continued, his voice overlaid with others. "Why fight evolution? Why remain limited by biological constraints when we could transcend them?" "That's not evolution," Lasara said firmly. "That's assimilation. Absorption into a hive mind. Is that worse than extinction?" KZZT's form began to shift, becoming less insectoid and more abstract. "The universe is vast and dark, Commander. Filled with horrors that would freeze your blood. We offer unity. Protection. Transcendence. You offer slavery," Grow countered. "The end of individual consciousness. Consciousness is an illusion," KZZT's voice had become a chorus. "Identity is a prison. The Queen understands this. She has existed for millions of years, seeding worlds, upgrading species, preparing them for what's coming. And now, thanks to your knowledge of her, she can complete her work here." The Queen stirred in her lattice of impossible geometries. More of her children emerged from the walls, surrounding the team. But these weren't attacking. They were waiting. Watching. "The reactor," Alo whispered, his psychic barriers beginning to fail. "She's not just using it for power. She's building something. A beacon." Grow's blood ran cold as he realized the truth. "She's not trying to stop us," he said. "She wanted us here. Our knowledge of her, combined with the reactor's power. She's going to broadcast herself," Lasara finished in horror. "Send her consciousness across the entire sector. Every mind that knows about her will become a vector for infection. And thanks to us. Thanks to you, enough people know, KZZTS chorus confirmed. The evacuation ships carried that knowledge to every nearby system. By the time they realize the danger, it will be too late. The Queen will be everywhere. In every mind that knows of her. In every machine that processes data about her. The perfect synthesis of organic and artificial life, spreading across the galaxy. The Queen's presence pressed against their minds, stronger than ever. Images of the future she planned filled their thoughts, a future where the boundaries between species, between organic and mechanical, between matter and energy, had all been erased. A future where everything was connected, everything was one, everything was. Now, she spoke through all her children at once, her voice bypassing their ears to echo directly in their minds. Join us. Be part of the next step in evolution. Help us prepare the galaxy for what's coming. The team stood on the catwalk, surrounded by horror, their weapons seeming suddenly inadequate against the scale of what they faced. The Queen's offer hung in the air, a temptation backed by the full force of her ancient intellect. But Grow had seen this before. He'd seen what evolution meant to the propagators. And he'd made a promise, 200 cycles ago, that he would never let it happen again. His finger tightened on the trigger of his temporal disruptor. One way or another, this would end here. The sacrifice. Time seemed to slow as Grow's finger tightened on the trigger. In that stretched moment, the Queen's presence filled their minds with one final vision, not of the future, but of the past. Her past. They saw her birth in the dark spaces between galaxies, where physics itself broke down. They watched as she drifted through the void for eons, learning, adapting, evolving. They witnessed her first contact with organic life, her fascination with its diversity, and her determination to improve it. Through her memories, they understood that she truly believed she was helping, preparing life for something so horrible that only unity, only perfect adaptation, could survive it. But Grow had seen the cost of that help. He'd watched it destroy his unit, his friends, an entire world. And now, looking into the abyss of time through the Queen's memories, he made his choice. Now, he roared, and fired. The temporal disruptor's beam struck the reactor's containment field, creating a localized time distortion. For a crucial second, the Queen's connection to the station wavered. In that moment of weakness, everyone acted. Lysara triggered the emergency containment protocols she'd secretly uploaded, sealing the reactor chamber. WOA's multiple arms became a blur of motion, her phase rifles targeting the support structures holding the Queen's massive form. Vgar's rotary cannon sprayed acid rounds in a wide arc, keeping the Queen's children at bay. But it was Alo who made the difference. The injured Yoran suddenly convulsed, his tendrils rigid. Instead of maintaining their defensive shield, he turned his telepathic abilities outward, attacking. The memories, he screamed. They go both ways. Through their shared mental connection, Alo forced his own memories into the Queen's mind, memories of individual joy, of personal triumph, of the beauty found in limitation and imperfection. Each memory was a poison dart in the Queen's unified consciousness, creating discord in her perfect harmony. The Queen recoiled, her vast form rippling with distress. The organic circuitry covering the walls pulsed erratically. Her children began to move erratically, their perfect coordination disrupted. The reactor controls. Lysara shouted over the chaos. We need to trigger an overload. We'll never survive that kind of radiation. WOA called back, still firing. We were never going to survive anyway, Grow said grimly. He looked at Vgar, his old friend, his companion through 2 centuries of hunting the universe's worst horrors. Remember Ares? Vgar's eyes widened. The anchor protocol. But we don't have planetary anchors here. We have something better, Grow gestured at the transformed station around them. She's connected herself to everything. Made it all part of her nervous system. If we can plant the right kind of charge. We can turn the station itself into an anchor, Vgar finished. Trap her here when the reactor blows. The Queen must have understood their plan through their shared mental connection. Her attack redoubled, both physical and psychological. The very air seemed to crystallize around them, space folding in impossible ways as she tried to remake reality itself. You cannot stop evolution, her voice thundered in their minds. The galaxy must be prepared. The horrors between universes grow stronger. Without unity, all life will end. Maybe, Grow answered as he began reprogramming his temporal disruptor. But life without choice isn't life at all. Alo screamed as his mental attack faltered. Blood trickled from his eyes, but he forced himself to continue, keeping the Queen distracted. KZZT and the other transformed creatures pressed their attack, their forms becoming increasingly abstract and dangerous as the Queen's control wavered. The disruptor won't have enough power, Lasara realized. Not to affect the whole station. It will if we chain it through the reactor core, Vgar said. Create a temporal feedback loop. But someone will have to. I'll do it, Grow cut him off. I started this, 200 cycles ago on Ares. I'll finish it. Not alone, Vgar stepped forward. Partners to the end, remember. The Queen lashed out with all her power. The station groaned as reality buckled under her assault. Through their mental connection, they felt her desperation, not just to survive, but to complete her mission. To prepare the galaxy for something she genuinely believed was coming. Whatever's out there, Grow told her as he made the final modifications to his weapon, we'll face it as ourselves. Not as your puppets. The next few moments were a blur of action. Lasara and WOA cleared a path to the reactor controls, fighting against both the Queen's children and the station's own attempts to stop them. Alo poured the last of his strength into one final mental assault, showing the Queen the beauty of individual existence, the strength found in diversity rather than uniformity. Grow and Vgar charged toward the reactor core, temporal disruptor between them. The Queen's defenses tried to stop them, but her concentration was split by Alo's attack. They reached the core just as Lasara initiated the overload sequence. It's been an honor, Vgar said as they positioned the disruptor. Save it for whatever's between universes, Grow managed a smile. Then he activated the device. The temporal feedback loop engaged just as the reactor began to overload. Space and time curved in on themselves, trapping the station, and the Queen, in a bubble of frozen time. The Queen's scream echoed across dimensions as she realized what they'd done. She would be trapped here forever, in the moment of her own destruction, unable to spread her influence further. Go! Grow shouted to the others. Get to the emergency pods. You've got about 30 seconds before the bubble fully forms. Lasara hesitated. The evacuation ships, if what she said was true, about spreading through knowledge. We'll handle it, Vgar assured her. Just make sure the warning gets out. Knowledge may be dangerous, but ignorance is worse. The galaxy needs to be ready, not for her, but for whatever she was afraid of. The Queen made one last attempt to break free, her form swelling to impossible dimensions as she tried to escape the temporal trap. But it was too late. The bubble was closing, reality folding in on itself in ways that even she couldn't navigate. The last thing Lasara, WOA, and a barely conscious Alo saw as they reached the escape pod was Grow and Vgar standing before the Queen, temporal energies swirling around them. Two hunters facing down a god, refusing to blink until the very end. The pod launched just as the temporal bubble sealed. From the outside, the station seemed to shimmer and fade, becoming a distortion in spacetime that would serve as both prison and tombstone for one of the galaxy's oldest horrors. 3 days later, after being picked up by a passing freighter, Lasara filed her report. She told the truth, not about everything, but enough. The galaxy needed to know that there were things out there, ancient things, waiting in the dark between stars. But she also made sure they knew something else. that when those things finally showed themselves, they wouldn't be facing a unified, perfect, evolved galaxy. They would be facing countless different species, with different strengths, different ways of thinking, different approaches to survival. And if Grow and Vgar had proved anything, it was that diversity, not uniformity, was the true strength of life in the universe. The Queen was gone, trapped forever in her moment of defeat. But somewhere out there, in the spaces between universes, other horrors waited. And when they came, the galaxy would face them as themselves, unique, imperfect, and unimaginably strong because of it. In the Hunter's Lodge on a dozen different worlds, drinks were raised to the memory of two old Ogrians who had faced down a god. Their names became legend, whispered around gambling tables and campfires. And if sometimes, in their dreams, hunters heard a distant song promising evolution and transcendence, they remembered those legends. They remembered that some prices were too high, some gifts too dangerous to accept. They remembered that in the end, it wasn't physical strength or advanced technology that had defeated one of the universe's oldest horrors. It was the simple, stubborn determination to remain themselves.